My name is Shade Clark, and this is my presentation on victim offender mediation and youth property crime. Restorative justice is an approach to justice that focuses on repairing the harm caused by crime rather than simply punishing the offender. Instead of asking, what law was broken and how should the offender be punished, restorative justice asks who was harmed, what their needs are, and how the harm can be repaired. One of the most common restorative justice processes is victim offender mediation, or VOM. In this process, the victim and offender voluntarily meet with a trained mediator to discuss the offense, its impact, and ways to repair the harm. I selected youth property crime because it often involves first-time or low-risk offenders who can benefit from accepting responsibility rather than entering the traditional criminal justice system. Property offenses such as theft and vandalism usually have identifiable victims, making them appropriate for restorative justice. Victim offender mediation promotes accountability, encourages offenders to understand the consequences of their actions, and give the victims the opportunity to have their voices heard while working towards meaningful solution. So here's the crime. Youth property crime refers to offenses involving the theft or damage of another person's property. Common examples include shoplifting, theft, vandalism, and break-and-enter offenses. Although these crimes may not always involve physical violence, they can still have significant consequences. Victims often experience financial losses, emotional stress, and reduced sense of safety. Offenders may face criminal charges, school discipline, damaged relationships, and future employment challenges because of a criminal record. Property crime also affects the wider community by increasing insurance costs, reducing public trust, and creating fear within neighborhoods. Many young offenders commit these crimes because their peer pressure, poor decision making, financial difficulties, or a lack of understanding of the consequences. Restorative justice recognizes that these offenders are still developing and may benefit more from education, accountability, and repairing the harm rather than from purely punitive sanctions. This approach attempts to reduce future offending while supporting victims and strengthening communities. Restorative justice process. VOM is a structured and voluntary restorative justice process facilitated by a trained mediator. Before any meeting takes place, the mediator meets separately with the victim and the offender to explain the process, ensure both parties are willing to participate, and determine whether VOM is appropriate. During the mediation session, the victim explains how the offense affected them emotionally, financially, and personally, while the offender accepts responsibility and has the opportunity to apologize. Together, they discuss ways to repair the harm, which may include financial restitution, community service, written apologies, or other agreed upon actions. After an agreement is reached, the mediator monitors the offender's progress to ensure the commitments are completed. This process promotes accountability, empathy, and communication while allowing victims to participate directly in resolving the harm caused by the offense. These are the strengths. VOM offers several important benefits compared with the traditional justice system. Victims are given an active voice throughout the process and are able to ask questions, explain the impact of the crime, and participate in determining an appropriate solution. Offenders are encouraged to take personal responsibility instead of simply receiving a punishment imposed by the court. Research has shown that restorative justice programs can reduce recidivism by helping offenders understand the real consequences of their actions and encouraging positive behavioral change. The process also supports emotional healing by allowing victims to express their experiences and, in some cases, receive an apology. From a justice system's perspective, restorative justice can reduce court costs, ease pressure on correctional facilities, and strengthen community involvement by encouraging collaboration between victims, offenders, families, and community organizations. These outcomes demonstrate that restorative justice can complement traditional justice while promoting rehabilitation and public safety. Here are now the limitations. Although VOM has many strengths, it is not appropriate for every case. Participation must always be voluntary, and both the victim and offender must be willing to engage honestly in the process. In cases involving serious violence, ongoing abuse, or significant power imbalances, restorative justice may not be suitable because victims could feel intimidated or re traumatized. Emotional risks also exist. If offenders fail to accept responsibility or if victims are not adequately prepared for the meeting, another challenge is the need for highly trained mediators who can ensure the process remains safe, fair, and respectful for everyone involved. In addition, restorative justice programs are not equally available across all communities, limiting access for some individuals and offenders. These limitations demonstrate that restorative justice should complement, not replace, the traditional justice system. Comparison with the traditional justice system. The traditional criminal justice system primarily focuses on determining guilt and imposing punishment for breaking the law. The victim often has a limited role, while the court and the state control the legal process. Restorative justice takes a different approach by focusing on repairing the harm caused by crime. Victims actively participate by explaining how they were affected, while offenders are encouraged to accept responsibility and work towards repairing the damage caused. Dialogue replaces formal courtroom proceedings, and accountability is measured by meaningful actions rather than punishment alone. Community members and support networks may also participate and encourage rehabilitation and reintegration. Although restorative justice is not appropriate for every offense, especially serious violent crimes, it provides a valuable alternative for many youth property crimes by promoting healing, reducing repeat offending, and strengthening relationships within the community. Ideally, restorative justice and the traditional justice system should work together to achieve both accountability and public safety. I believe that restorative justice always works when there's a certain age limitation put on it, because we live now in a time where the internet is accessible, information is accessible. A lot of people, including teens, youth, are very aware that they are protected by the Youth and Criminal Justice Act, and they're well aware that if they commit a crime now, there's a good chance they're going to get away with it, or their future will still be in standing because they are protected. Their identities are protected, and there's a good chance that they can go back and recommit the same crime all over again because the law is set in place. It only works, I believe, with maybe, I would say, elementary children. I would put a certain number on it. If I could say maybe 14 years old, when kids enter high school, I will put a stop to it because they have access to the internet, as I said before, and they are more prone to being peer pressured. Once children step into high school, or the youth step into high school, they're open to a new world where their peers would tell them it's okay, we'll get away with it anyways because we're protected and we're not adults and they're not going to be tried as adults. I believe prison is necessary. A lot of children, as I said before, they know what they're doing. They know it's bad, that's why they're sneaky with it. I don't believe they should be protected under the Youth and Criminal Justice Act, and I don't believe they should receive restorative justice. Even if it's just property theft, they know it's wrong and they still do it because they know they're protected. That's not fair to the victims who work hard to maintain or get the things they have just for it to be stolen by some kids that know they're going to be protected at the end of the day. I don't think Canada should expand it. I've been a victim of harassment within my workplace before, and I did not accept restorative justice because in my workplace, people are covered by the union, including myself. They're covered by the union. So a lot of these older people, they understand that they'll get away with certain things because they're protected. And we live in a country where feelings of others matter, and what people went through and are going through magically matters to them doing wrong to somebody else. So they might do something and then they'll turn around and say, oh, it's because of my mental illness, when that's not fair because there are victims involved. So I don't think it should expand any more than it has already because people are already taking the worst advantage of a kind system. And if it were flipped around in a other country, let's say a country where, like, let's say a European country where nobody really cares about your feelings, once you're wrong is wrong, you will be facing the consequences. But because people know Canada's reputation for being nice, then they're always going to, like, the system gives them an inch and they take a mile. Let's just put it like that. Serious offenses? Absolutely not. Should never qualify for restorative justice. Any sort of restorative justice. If kids are going out stealing cars, you're telling me kids don't understand that stealing cars is bad? That's something we all learn as children, is that stealing cars is bad. If these kids are going out and they're trying to test the system, they're trying to see how far they go, they know it's wrong. So why should I ever say, if I work so hard to obtain my vehicle, let's say I have a BMW, right? If I work so hard to maintain my vehicle, why should I ever be okay or allow kids to steal from me? And I know if I were to do anything to them physically, I will go to prison, but they will always be protected under the law. That's not fair. I don't think this restorative justice thing should go any further than 14 years old, and I don't think it should spread any further with a more serious crime, with more serious offenses. I believe we should expand restorative justice for younger children, give them more of a space to learn the consequences of their actions. As I said before, put a stop to it, obviously, but as for elementary school to around 13, 14 years old, I would expand it more. I would increase the funding for it. I believe children's minds are easily molded, and if let's say teachers, whoever guardians, whichever professionals that deal with children, they should be able to have the proper resources to explain to kids and to educate kids not to do certain things, not only for their future, but for somebody else too. The public should be more aware of it. I believe that if a lot of the public understood what restorative justice actually was and who it's actually meant for and what scenarios or situations it's applied to, it would be more accepted. But I believe anyone that's making that awareness should also be able to have the backbone to take criticism from the public. And this brings on more to trained facilitators. Trained facilitators is not only people that can sit down and be basically the middleman to both the victim and the offender. They should also be able to educate anyone that needs to understand more of what restorative justice really is. As I said before, offer restorative justice earlier for youth offenders, as in early teenage years, so that later on they're not like the apple doesn't get spoiled. So it's already bad, but we don't want it to get spoiled, basically. In conclusion, restorative justice should not replace the traditional criminal justice system, but rather complement it. Restorative, victim offender mediation provides victims with a voice, encourages offenders to accept responsibility, and promote healing for everyone affected. By combining restorative justice with traditional justice, Canada can create a more balanced system that supports accountability, rehabilitation, and safer communities. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Goodbye.